Frankie wants to know what's the significance of the four-leaf clover, the green colors, and all the other things associated with St. Patrick's Day that's coming up. Well, good question, Frankie. Thank you for asking it. The significance of St. Patrick's Day is much like any other local holiday that ended up international. A lot of cultural themes and I guess, flavors and personalities of people in history that are being remembered. For example, here in the United States, we remember Martin St. Luther Jr. and his contribution to the, what's the term I'm looking for? Not the equality, but the whole racial issues that were going on in the mid 1900s. The segregation, thank you. I eventually remembered. When we're talking about him, obviously, there are things we could draw attention to that are negative, like his marital issues, his promotion of the false doctrine of subordinationism, and it would ultimately miss the point as to why we're remembering the day. And, of course, that was that he was used by God in a very powerful way to give a very, not only insightful and inspiring, but a very biblically rich sermon on the equality of man and the purpose for which we, of course, should see each other, not based on our merits, not based on our skin color, but based on the content of our character. Same is true for St. Patrick, and the jolly old Irishmen choose to remember him very fondly because he was a very, very prominent example of the heart of God to the Irish people, despite being born in Scotland. Now, Scotland, of course, where St. Patrick, and although, by the way, the Roman Catholic Church doesn't recognize him as a saint, I probably won't go into the politics on that, but being a saint just means you have a right relationship with God. Anyone in Jesus is a saint. That said, he was enslaved by the Irish and, of course, taken in by them when paganism was dominating their culture and worldview. And despite these horrible Joseph-like circumstances, he learned the language, he learned the culture, and he tried to share the gospel with them in any way that he could. When he made comparisons, for instance, to the four-leaf clover and the Trinity, that, of course, is a false comparison. We're not using a term to explain the existence of one clover that shares immutable and indistinguishable attributes, yet all leaves exist simultaneously at the same time. It is like Neapolitan ice cream or the egg or the water. It's a failed analogy because you're comparing creation to the creator. That said, we're not focusing on his errors. We're focusing on the thing that he did right, because when he eventually escaped from slavery, he went back. And with his working knowledge of the language and the culture, he produced a lot of churches, a lot of spiritual leaders and Bible teachers in that area, and he's still honored by their culture today. Not because he was, driving out the snakes, so to speak, but because he was a model of the heart of God. People who abused him, people who enslaved him, people who took him from his family, when he finally had the chance for freedom, he voluntarily came back and sought their betterment, even at his own expense. The reason we celebrate it on March 17th is because that is the day he physically died. And of course, if you desire to wear green, it's a reference to spring and all the other themes that the Gaelic community, or Celtic, took very much to heart. But when it ultimately comes down to it, wasn't the perfect Bible teacher, but by no means was he the worst either. So if you want to celebrate his day, by all means go for it. Just understand that the Trinity isn't a clover, and that the heart of God is to seek the betterment of others, even people you would formerly call your enemies.
There you go. St. Patrick's, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wear green.
And